Serena, a beautiful bride in a wheelchair, ready to marry the love of her life. But as she rolled down the aisle, her trembling hands and secretive smile hinted at something far greater. What happened next left everyone speechless, and the groom in tears. Keep watching to find out how the story unfolds. We'd love to know where you are watching our story from, and drop your location in the comment section. Let's begin. The room was alive with the soft hum of activity, bridesmaids moving about, the faint hiss of hairspray, and the melodic laughter of women sharing the bride's excitement. Serena sat in front of the mirror, her gown cascaded around her like a cloud, the intricate lace shimmering with every small movement. Yet, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the delicate pearl necklace resting against her collarbone. There was something weighing on Serena, something she couldn't share. Not yet. "Serena, you look absolutely breathtaking," said Emma, her maid of honor and lifelong best friend, as she gently adjusted Serena's veil. Emma's eyes sparkled with joy, but her tone softened as she noticed Serena's unease. "Are you okay? You seem distracted." Serena forced a laugh, waving away the concern. "I'm fine, Emma. Just a little nervous, I guess. You know, wedding jitters." But it wasn't just wedding jitters. Serena had a secret, one she had carried for years, and today was the day she planned to reveal it. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. Would James understand? Would he see it for what it was, a symbol of her love and trust, or would it change the way he felt about her? James, meanwhile, was pacing outside the ceremony tent, his heart racing in anticipation. Tall and broad-shouldered, with an easy smile and eyes that seemed to hold the promise of forever, James looked every bit the groom of a fairy tale. His groomsmen teased him lightly as they adjusted their ties, but James's mind was elsewhere. "Don't worry, man," joked Peter, his best friend. "She's not going to run out on you." James chuckled, though the knot in his stomach remained. Serena had been acting a little off lately. Not distant, exactly. Her love for him was always evident. That there was something unsaid, something behind her smiles that made him wonder if everything was truly all right. He brushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the day ahead. Today was about their love, a love that had weathered every storm and silenced every doubt. Serena's story was well known among their family and friends. A kind-hearted woman who used a wheelchair due to a childhood condition, Serena was a source of inspiration to everyone who knew her. She carried herself with a quiet strength that earned her admiration wherever she went. But what truly captivated people was the love she shared with James. As the guests settled into their seats, the string quartet began to play, the soft melodies floating through the air like a gentle breeze. Serena's father stood just outside the tent, ready to escort her down the aisle. He bent down to kiss her on the forehead. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," he said. "Thanks, Dad," Serena whispered, her hands gripping the bouquet a little too tightly. "I just hope I don't trip on my way down the aisle," she joked, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Her father laughed softly, but there was a glint of worry in his eyes. He had noticed her nervous energy too, though he chose not to press. Serena had always been headstrong, and he trusted she would share whatever was on her mind when the time was right. When the music shifted to the bride's processional, James turned toward the aisle, his heart thudding in his chest. The bridesmaids appeared first, moving gracefully, their smiles radiant. And then there she was, Serena. The crowd collectively held its breath as she appeared at the top of the aisle, her father behind her, gently wheeling her forward. Her gown sparkled in the sunlight, and her smile was enough to bring tears to James's eyes. In that moment, all his worries evaporated. This was Serena, his Serena, the woman who had taught him what love truly meant. Serena's gaze locked with James's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stand still. She saw the love in his eyes, unwavering and unspoken, and it gave her courage. Today, she would tell him and finally let go of the fear that had lived inside her for so long. As she reached the altar, James bent down to kiss her hand. "You're stunning," he whispered. Serena blushed, her fingers tightening slightly around his. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice trembling just enough for him to notice. The officiant began the ceremony, his warm voice setting the tone for the vows to come. But as Serena sat beside James, her heart raced. She knew what she was about to do. She glanced at James, her lips curving into a small, secretive smile. "James," she whispered, leaning closer. "There's something I need to tell you." Serena shook her head. "Not now, but during my vows." James felt his chest tightened. What could she possibly have to say that she couldn't tell him here, in this moment? He wondered. Serena had always been a fighter. From the moment she was diagnosed with her condition as a child, she faced the world with courage. Born with a spinal disorder that made walking impossible, Serena grew up in a world that wasn't always kind to those who were different. School hallways were filled with whispers and stares. Playgrounds became arenas of exclusion, and even teachers, despite their best intentions, often treated her like someone fragile, someone less. But Serena was anything but fragile. Her parents, steadfast in their support, always reminded her that her disability didn't define her. "You're more than your wheelchair," her mother would say, her voice firm yet loving. "You've got a heart that can move mountains." Serena held on to those words through every struggle, every tear shed in private. In high school, she refused to let her disability keep her on the sidelines. She joined the debate team, where her quick wit earned her respect. She volunteered at local shelters, feeding the homeless and tutoring children. Yet, despite her many accomplishments, the ache of being seen as different never truly left her. Classmates often avoided her, unsure of how to act around her, and even casual friendships felt tinged with pity. One particular day stood out in Serena's memory. She had worked tirelessly to organize a charity event, pouring her heart into every detail. At the event's conclusion, while others celebrated its success, Serena overheard a comment from a peer. "She's impressive, but I feel bad for her. She'll probably never have a normal life." The words cut deep, reinforcing the fear that lingered in Serena's heart, that no one would ever see her as just Serena, a young woman with dreams, laughter, and love to give. Years later, Serena's life changed in a way she never expected. It was a sunny afternoon at a community fundraiser when she met James. She had been sitting at a booth, handing out flyers for a local charity she supported, when a tall, broad-shouldered man with hazel eyes stopped by. "Mind if I take one of these?" he asked, gesturing to the flyers. "Of course not," Serena replied with a smile. "It's for a good cause." James leaned on the booth's edge, his grin easy and warm. "Looks like you've already convinced me." He chatted with Serena for a while, his interest genuine, his laugh infectious. Unlike so many others, he didn't seem to notice her wheelchair, or if he did, he didn't let it define their interaction. Instead, he noticed her passion, her humor, her intelligence. Over the next few weeks, James found excuses to visit Serena's charity events, always lingering near her booth. He began asking her out, though Serena initially hesitated. The shadow of doubt loomed large in her mind. What if James only liked her because he felt sorry for her? What if he eventually realized her disability was too much to handle? But James was persistent in the gentlest way. He never pressured her, never made her feel less than. Instead, he showed her, through small acts of kindness and unwavering patience, that his feelings were real. Serena eventually said yes to dinner, and from that first date, their bond blossomed. James treated her like an equal, never shying away from the realities of her disability, but never making it the centerpiece of their relationship either. As their love deepened, so did Serena's insecurities. Though James never gave her a reason to doubt his devotion, Serena couldn't shake the fear that she might not be enough. She worried about the future, how her disability might impact their dreams, their plans, their life together. One evening after a long day, Serena sat with her mother in their cozy living room, the flicker of candlelight softening the room's edges. Her mother, ever perceptive, sensed Serena's unease. "James loves you," she said simply, her hands resting gently over Serena's. "And you love him. That's enough." Serena nodded, her eyes glistening. "But what if I can't give him everything? What if someday he looks at me and thinks about all the things I can't do?" Her mother's voice was steady. "Love isn't about what you can or can't do, Serena. It's about what you build together. Don't let your fears steal your joy." Despite her mother's reassurance, Serena carried that fear in her heart. She wanted to show James that she could offer him everything, every dream, every possibility. And so, quietly, she began working towards something extraordinary. For years, she attended physical therapy sessions in secret, pushing herself through grueling exercises. The progress was slow, sometimes non-existent, and often painful. There were moments of frustration when she wanted to give up, but her love for James kept her going. Emma, her best friend, was the only one who suspected something. One evening, Serena let slip a cryptic comment while they were having coffee. "You've been disappearing a lot lately," Emma said, narrowing her eyes. "What are you up to?" Serena hesitated, twirling her mug in her hands. "It's nothing. Just something I've been working on." Emma pressed her lips into a thin line. "Serena, if this is about James, you know he loves you just the way you are." "I know," Serena said, her voice soft but firm. "But it's important to me. I need to do this, for him, and for myself." Though Emma didn't fully understand, she nodded, sensing that whatever Serena was planning, it came from a place of love. The music swelled, signaling the start of the ceremony. The groomsmen and bridesmaids walked down the aisle, their smiles radiant as they took their places. Finally, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Serena appeared at the top of the aisle, her father behind her, gently wheeling her toward the altar. The crowd fell silent. Serena was breathtaking. Her gown sparkled in the sunlight, the intricate lace and beading catching the light with every movement. Her veil cascaded like a waterfall, framing her face, and her bouquet of lilacs and white roses trembled slightly in her hands. But it was her smile, both soft and nervous, that captured everyone's attention. James's breath hitched as he saw her. She was always beautiful to him, but today she looked like a dream. He felt his eyes sting with emotion as she made her way down the aisle, her father whispering words of encouragement in her ear. Serena's gaze locked onto James as the distance between them disappeared. In his hazel eyes, she saw love, pure and unwavering. It steadied her, even as her heart raced with the weight of what she was about to do. When Serena reached the altar, her father kissed her on the forehead and stepped aside, leaving her and James to face each other. James bent down slightly, taking her hands in his. "You're stunning," he whispered. Serena smiled, her fingers tightening around his. "Thank you." The officiant began the ceremony, his deep voice carrying over the garden. He spoke of love, of commitment, and of the bond that Serena and James shared. The words were beautiful, but Serena barely heard them. Her mind was a whirlwind of nerves and anticipation. She could feel the weight of her secret pressing down on her, the years of preparation culminating in this one moment. Then it was time for the vows. James went first. He looked directly into Serena's eyes, his voice steady and full of love. "Serena, from the moment I met you, my life changed. You've shown me what it means to love unconditionally, to be strong, and to find joy in every moment. You are my light, my partner, and my best friend. I promise to stand by your side, to support you, and to love you with all that I am, for today, tomorrow, and every day after." Tears streamed down Serena's cheeks as James's words wrapped around her heart. The guests sniffled quietly, many wiping their own eyes at the sheer emotion of the moment. Then it was Serena's turn. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly in James's. Her voice wavered as she began, her gaze shifting between James and the sea of faces watching her. "James," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, You've given me a love I never thought I'd have. You've shown me that I am enough, just as I am. You've stood by me through everything, and I'll never be able to thank you enough for that." Her words faltered, and she paused, her lips trembling. The silence grew heavy, and James's brow furrowed in concern. "There's something I need to tell you," Serena continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Something I've carried with me since I was a little girl. It's a secret I've kept, even from you." A murmur rippled through the guests, their curiosity piqued. James's grip on her hands tightened slightly, his eyes searching hers for answers. "I've spent my whole life dreaming of this day," Serena said, tears streaming down her face. "Not just because I wanted to marry you, but because I wanted to show you that love is worth every challenge, every fear, every sacrifice." Serena's hands slipped from James as she moved them to the arms of her wheelchair. She took another shaky breath, and then, slowly, deliberately, she began to rise. Gasps filled the air as Serena pushed herself to her feet, her legs trembling but holding steady beneath her. The crowd froze, stunned into silence. Some guests clutched their hands over their mouths, while others stared wide-eyed, unable to process what they were seeing. James's jaw dropped, his eyes filling with tears as he took a step back in shock. "Serena," he whispered, his voice breaking. Serena steadied herself, standing tall for the first time in years. Her bouquet quivered in her hands as she looked at James, her own tears falling freely. "I've been working toward this moment for so long," she said, her voice trembling, "because I wanted to give you everything. I wanted to show you that love made me stronger than I ever thought I could be." James covered his mouth with his hand, tears streaming down his face. The man who always had the perfect words was now rendered speechless. Serena glanced out at the sea of faces, the emotions of her guests reflecting back at her. Astonishment, joy, and admiration. Then her eyes returned to James, who stood before her, his expression a mixture of awe and love. "James," she said softly, her voice steady now, "I wanted to walk to you today, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. For you. For us." The world seemed to hold its breath as James stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. His voice broke as he finally spoke. "Serena, you've always been everything to me. This just shows me how much you love me. But I've loved you just as you are from the very beginning." James's lips parted as though he wanted to say something, but no words came. His chest heaved with the effort of holding back sobs. Serena pressed on, her voice trembling but strong. "It started not long after we met," she continued, glancing down briefly at her trembling hands. "I knew from the moment I fell in love with you that you deserved everything. And I was afraid that I might not be enough, that I couldn't give you the life you deserved." Gasps rippled through the crowd at her words, and a few murmurs of disbelief were heard. Serena held up a hand, addressing them as much as James. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her voice breaking. "You're wondering why I kept this a secret, why I didn't share this journey with anyone, not even James." She paused, tears glistening in her eyes. "It's because I was afraid that if I never walked again, if I could never stand beside him as his equal, he might eventually regret choosing me." The crowd was silent again, this time out of respect for the vulnerability in Serena's words. Emma, Serena's maid of honor, covered her mouth with her hands, her own tears spilling over. Serena's parents clutched each other, torn between pride and heartbreak. James finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Serena, you thought I might leave you." Serena's lip quivered, but she nodded. "It wasn't because of anything you said or did. It was me. I've spent my whole life being seen as less, as someone people have to take care of. I didn't want you to feel like you had to settle for me." James staggered back slightly, as if the words physically hit him. His expression was a mixture of love, disbelief, and hurt. Serena's voice grew firmer as she pushed through her emotions. "So I started therapy," she continued, her voice steadying as she recounted her journey. "At first, it felt impossible. I couldn't even stand for more than a few seconds without falling. The pain, it was unbearable some days. But I kept going. I kept pushing myself because I wanted to give you this moment. I wanted you to know that I was willing to fight for us, no matter how hard it was. She paused, the raw emotion of her confession hanging in the air. I wanted to surprise you, to give you something you didn't expect. Not for drama, not to hide anything, but because I love you so much that I wanted to give you this as a gift. The guests reacted in waves. Some clapped softly, their faces shining with admiration and tears. Others whispered among themselves, marveling at Serena's resilience. But a few looked puzzled, as if wondering why she felt the need to go to such lengths when her love for James had already been so clear. James, however, remained silent. His tears fell freely, but his face was a portrait of conflicted emotions. Serena noticed and reached out to him, her voice soft now. "James, please," she said. "Say something." James stepped closer to her, his hands trembling as he took hers. "Serena, I don't even know where to begin," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm in awe of you. What you've done, it's incredible. But..." He hesitated, his expression clouded. "Why didn't you trust me? Why did you think I would ever leave you? Do you know how much it hurts to think you doubted my love after everything we've been through?" Serena flinched at his words, guilt washing over her. "It wasn't about you," she said quickly. "It was my own fear. I've been afraid of losing people my whole life because of how they see me. I didn't want to lose you." The officiant, sensing the tension, stepped aside as James and Serena moved a few steps away from the altar. The guests murmured softly, unsure of what to expect. In the quiet corner, away from the crowd, James cupped Serena's face in his hands, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Serena, I love you," he said, his voice trembling. "I've loved you from the moment I met you, and I never once doubted that you were enough. But it hurts to know that you doubted me. Do you understand that?" Serena nodded, her tears falling again. "I do, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to be everything you deserve." "You already are," James said, his voice breaking. "You always were." For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the weight of the truth settling between them. Then James pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as the world seemed to fade away. "I'm not mad," James whispered into her hair. "I'm just overwhelmed. But I love you, Serena. Nothing will ever change that. Serena, I need you to understand something. From the moment I met you, I didn't see a wheelchair. I didn't see limitations or struggles. I saw your heart, your humor, your strength. Those are the things that made me fall in love with you." Serena opened her mouth to speak, but he gently placed a finger on her lips, his touch filled with tenderness. "Let me finish," he said. "I spent these years loving you for everything you are, not for anything you could or couldn't do. You didn't need to walk for me to love you. You were already more than enough." Tears rolled down Serena's cheeks as James's words settled in her heart. "I was so afraid," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Afraid that I couldn't give you the life you wanted, that you'd regret choosing me." James shook his head, his voice trembling with emotion. "I've never regretted a single moment with you. Not once. But you know what's funny? I've had my own fears too." Serena's brows furrowed in surprise. "Your fears?" James nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "I've always worried that I wasn't enough for you, that you deserved someone better, someone who could give you more. But I never said anything because I didn't want you to see how scared I was." Serena reached for his hands, her own shaking as she held them tightly. "You've always been more than enough, James. Always." For a moment, they simply held each other's gaze, the weight of their fears dissolving in the warmth of their love. James leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. "We've both carried so much doubt, haven't we? But we don't need to anymore. Let's promise each other right here, right now, to leave all of that behind." Serena nodded, her lips curving into a watery smile. "I promise." Hand in hand, Serena and James turned back toward the altar, where the officiants stood waiting. The guests erupted into applause as the couple made their way back, their love now brighter than ever. The officiant smiled warmly, his voice steady as he spoke. Love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, about standing by each other through every fear, every challenge. Today we've witnessed a love that reminds us all of the power of commitment. The vows were spoken again, this time with even greater depth. James's voice was firm, his love evident in every word, and Serena's vows carried a newfound confidence, her fears replaced with hope. By the time they exchanged rings, there wasn't a dry eye in the garden. As the ceremony concluded, Serena's father stepped forward, his eyes misty with emotion. He took the microphone and cleared his throat, his voice cracking slightly as he began to speak. Serena, you've always been my little warrior. From the moment you were born, you showed us what it means to fight, to hope, and to love. And today, seeing you stand here, so strong and so full of love, I couldn't be prouder. The guests clapped, and then James's mother stepped forward, her voice steady but emotional. James, she said, you've always been the kind of man who sees the heart before the surface. Watching you and Serena together has been one of the greatest joys of my life. You remind us all what true love looks like, unconditional and fearless. The speeches continued, each one celebrating the couple's journey and the strength of their bond. Laughter and tears filled the air as friends and family shared stories of the love that had brought them all together. For their first dance, Serena took a deep breath, looking up at James. Ready? He asked, his hand steadying her as she nodded. Slowly, with James guiding her, Serena took her first steps on the dance floor. The guests erupted into cheers and applause, their love for the couple spilling over in every clapping hand and tear-streaked face. With each step, Serena felt stronger, more confident, and by the time the song ended, she was beaming. James lifted her slightly, spinning her around as the crowd cheered even louder. In his arms, Serena felt weightless, her fears replaced with pure, unfiltered joy. As the night drew to a close, Serena and James sat together under the twinkling lights, surrounded by their loved ones. Serena rested her head on James's shoulder, her heart full. "Thank you for loving me," she whispered. James kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for teaching me what love really means." The couple's journey, marked by vulnerability and triumph, had touched everyone in attendance. Their story was no longer just about overcoming obstacles. It was about embracing love in its purest form. Serena and James began their new chapter together, hand in hand, their hearts unburdened and full of hope for the future. Did you enjoy this story? Drop love in the comments so that I know you watched the video to the end. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not already done so. We have more inspiring stories for you. Thanks for watching.